Linda Geffen, let's go to you. You helped convict Dwayne Buck. He ended up with the death penalty, being sentenced to death. Why have you changed your view on his case right now?
14 years after the trial, I saw on the internet the offensive testimony in black and white. And when I had the opportunity to read it and to really absorb what it was saying, it was so, I had so much clarity that it was racially offensive, it was egregious, and it was error. So I emailed Mr. Buck's lawyer and asked how I could help.
Talk about what that quote was. I'll read a comment Dr. Quijano made to the New York Times. He said, quote, "I was asked a question whether there's a relationship between race and violence or dangerousness. The literature suggests there's a correlation, so I had to say yes," he added. "It's not because of the blackness of the person that's causing the violence. It's what goes with it. Poverty, the exposure to lack of education, exposure to criminal elements." Let's go to our guest right here in New York, Christina Swarns, your response to that.
Well, I think Dr. Quijano made quite clear that what he believed and what the state was looking for him to say was that because Mr. Buck was and is African American, he posed a future danger to society. And the prosecution and cross-examination elicited that testimony. They then went on to argue specifically that point during closing argument. What the prosecutor said in closing was Dr. Quijano testified that he would pose a future danger, and that on that basis you should find that he is a future danger and he should be sentenced to death. I would go on to say that, as the New York Times reported, Dr. Quijano's opinion, of course, about this is false. There isn't a real connection to support a future dangerousness finding.
Now, explain, Linda, in Houston, Texas. Can you explain what it is that happened, that 6 cases where Quijano's testimony was involved were all reevaluated? 5 of them, those prisoners who were on death row, ended up with life without parole, except for the case of Dwayne Buck. What happened?
It appears that then Attorney General John Cornyn became aware of the racial bias that had infected these cases, and he ordered a review of all of these cases that Dr. Quijano testified in. And each case, he gave an opinion that they need a resentencing hearing, and all of them received their hearing except for Mr. Buck. And it's likely, or it seems probable, that that happened because A.G. Cornyn was at the end of his term. He went on to do other things. The next AG, Greg Abbott, came in.
A.G. Cornyn, of course, is the current senator from Texas, John Cornyn.
That is true. That is true. And the current AG, Greg Abbott, did not grant the resentencing or recommend the resentencing hearing. It clearly looks that Mr. Buck's case fell through the cracks, which is even more egregious when it's a capital case. No individual, no defendant should ever fall through the cracks of the criminal justice system. But when the ultimate punishment is on the line, it is morally reprehensible.